Itu kami mohon Bapak dan Ibu untuk dapat menempati tempat yang telah kami siapkan. Ini saya dulu baru bumper aja Pak. Saya announce sebentar ya. Ladies and gentlemen, SDGs Lecture 2025 is about to begin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good afternoon and warm welcome to Secretary for the Ministry of National Development Planning, Chief Secretary for the National Development Planning Agency, Ibu Teni Widurianti, Deputy for Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation, Ibu Vivi Yulaswati. Good afternoon and welcome to officials of the first and middle echelon within the ministries agencies of the Republic of Indonesia, Vice Chairman of the National Economic Council, Ibu Mari Elka Pangestu, President of the United in Diversity Foundation, Bapak Tantowi Yahya, President of the Sustainable Development Solution Network, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Rector of IPB University, Professor Dr. Arif Satria, President of the Indonesia Global Compact Network, Bapak Yaya Junardi, and also welcome to representative of government officials, parliament members, business and philanthropists, civil society organization, academics, and experts, and of course to all our distinguished guests who have joined with us. We welcome you to SDGs Lecture 2025, Indonesia Path in Global Challenges, Shaping a Sustainable World. Held today, Friday, January 17, 2025, at the Junaidi Hadi Sumarto Hall, Bappenas Building, Taman Suropati, Jakarta. This event is joint collaboration between Ministry of National Development Planning, United in Diversity Foundation, and Sustainable Development Solution Network. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Firdaus Nur Ananda, and I will be honored to guide the proceedings of today's event. SDGs Lecture 2025 will start with welcoming remarks from the Secretary for the Ministry of National Development Planning, followed by opening insight from the President of the United in Diversity Foundation, an opening speech from the Vice Chairman of Economic Council, and then we will listen the lecture by Prof. Jeffrey Sachs as President of the Sustainable Development Solution Network. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin today's agenda, we will now hear the welcoming remarks, which will be delivered by the Secretary for the Ministry of National Development Planning, Chief Secretary for the National Development Planning Agency. To Ibu Teni Widurianti, the floor is yours.
Distinguished Professor Jeffrey Sachs, President of the Sustainable Development Solution Network, or SDSN. Distinguished Ibu Mari Elka Pangestu, Vice Chairman of the National Economic Council of the Republic of Indonesia. Distinguished Ambassador Tantowi Yahya, President of United in Diversity, or UID. Professor Dr. Arif Satria, Rector of IPB University, Bapak Yahya W. Junardi, President of Indonesia Global Compact Network, Ibu Alisa Wahid, SDG Ambassador of Indonesia, colleagues and partners in sustainable development, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, salam sejahtera, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. I'm very honored today to welcome you all to SDGs Lecture 2025. On behalf of the Minister, I would like to convey his apology for not being here, because now he is in the cabinet meeting at this very moment, and he sent the very welcome you to have the lecture this afternoon. Today we gather to reaffirm our shared commitment to addressing global challenges and building a more sustainable world, guided by spirit and goals of the Sustainable Development Goals. Indonesia has demonstrated a strong and unwavering commitment to the SDG. These goals have been deeply integrated into our National Development Plan through the National Medium-Term Development Plan and the Long-Term Development Vision, or RPGM, and NRPGP. Sustainability has been placed at the heart of our efforts to achieve Indonesia Emas 2045, a future that is sovereign, just, and sustainable. Our progress in advancing SDGs has been recognized globally. The Sustainable Development Solution Network has named Indonesia as the most committed country in the Asia Pacific for advancing SDGs, achieving 60% of our targets and the highest among upper middle income countries. As the national coordinator for SDGs implementation, Bappenas play a central role in ensuring that sustainability is mainstream at every single level, from national ministries to local government. Coordinated planning, data-driven monitoring, and multi-stakeholders collaboration are essential pillars driving this transformation. This year marks a pivotal moment in Indonesia's journey towards sustainable development. We are updating the presidential regulation on SDG, preparing new national action plan, or Rencana Aksi Nasional, and submitting to fourth voluntary national review, or VNR, to the United Nations. These steps highlight Indonesia's dedication to aligning national priorities with global goals and ensuring that sustainability remains a central focus of our policy. The SDGs Lecture today, 2025, marks the first edition of the SDGs Lecture series, a new initiative designed to deepen the engagement and understanding about the sustainable development. Organized by the National SDG Secretariat, this series aims to foster dialogue, share best practices, and inspire collaboration among diverse stakeholders. In this time of urgencies and complexity, the series seeks to address critical issues and explore innovative solutions. We are deeply honored to have with us today Professor Jeffrey Sachs, a globally respected leader in sustainable development. His wealth of knowledge and experience will illuminate, inspire, and spark meaningful discussion. His insight will guide our journey as we strive to position Indonesia as a leader in sustainability and global collaboration. Finally, let us remember that SDGs are closely aligned with Indonesia's national priority, including the Asta Cita programs under President Prabowo's leadership. By integrating the SDGs into these programs, we ensure that our national goals contribute to both domestic progress and global sustainable development efforts. Thank you, and I hope this lecture inspires us all to take meaningful action for better, more sustainable future, and I wish you all a fruitful and meaningful event. Thank you all. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Ibu Teni Widurianti, for your welcoming remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, following the next agenda, we are honored to have President of the United in Diversity Foundation to deliver his opening insight to Bapak Tantowi Yahya. The floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Good afternoon. I feel very honored and distinguished to be given a chance to be among you this afternoon in these very remarkable occasions where we gather to discuss about a critical topic on shaping a sustainable world amidst pressing global challenges. First and foremost, as the President of United in Diversity Foundations, I would like to thank Bappenas for co-hosting this event, and also Minister Rahmat Pambudi, who hopefully will join us later this afternoon, for helping us a lot in making this happen. And also would like to convey my sincere thanks to Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who flies thousands of miles away from the United States to come here to share his profound insights on how the world is going to look like a few years from now even. And also would like to thank one of the busiest persons in Indonesia, Ibu Mari Pangestu, who hops from one seminar to another, sharing her thought on finance, on sustainability, and lately on the climate funding. Also would like to thank Professor Arif Satria, my very good friend, one of the busiest professors and rectors in Indonesia, who travels around Indonesia to share his thought on sustainability. And also my long but still very good friend of mine, Pak Yaya Junardi, the president of Indonesia Global Compact Network. We have been good friends for so long for one reason: we both love country music. And also Ibu Tani Widurianti, the secretary of Bappenas, and all the deputies of Bappenas that I cannot mention one by one. And of course, on top of everything, you all, ladies and gentlemen, for being here this afternoon. Today, we will be discussing about how the world is gonna look like in the future by inviting all the distinguished speakers. And I feel very fortunate being of an institution in Indonesia who deals a lot on sustainability, United in Diversity Foundation. Actually, on December last year, we managed to make an event called Trihita Karana Universal Reflection Journey. How can I forget that? Only 2 months ago. In this seminar, we talk about many issues based on the foundations of people-planet partnerships for peace and prosperity. So, ladies and gentlemen, we feel very fortunate of having Professor Jeffrey Sachs this afternoon. He comes on time. He comes post an accord or agreement between Hamas and Israel on ceasefire. Hopefully it's going to happen and it will stay forever. And I think besides about sustainability, Professor Sachs will share a lot about that. And also he comes timely. He comes after we know that actually South Korea, Japan, and China are members of ASEAN. I think it's a very good news, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are at crossroads in human history. The global challenges we face, climate change, economic inequality, biodiversity loss, and social polarizations are not merely environmental or economic issues. They are the systemic challenges of humanity. As one of the world's largest democracies and the heart of the ASEAN regions, whose member is only 10 countries, Indonesia is at the forefront of these global challenges. Our nation is uniquely positioned to lead the charge in fostering a sustainable future. We are blessed with rich biodiversity, a young and dynamic population, and a history rooted in the principles of togetherness and harmony, values that resonate deeply with the Sustainable Development Goals. However, leadership requires not only resources and resolution, but also a shared vision on collaborative action. That is why the role of platforms like today's lectures is essential. Professor Sachs, a global thought leader and champion of sustainable development, has long inspired us to think beyond borders and time horizons. His presence here reflects the spirit of mateship between nations, organizations, and individuals that is crucial to addressing these complex systemic issues. In the United in Diversity, we are committed to fostering collaboration and trust among leaders from business, government, and civil society to co-create solutions for sustainable development. We firmly believe that united in diversity Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, is not just Indonesia's motto, but actually a global necessity. It's only by embracing our differences, reflecting them, and working together that we can find innovative and inclusive solutions for the future. As part of our efforts, UID takes pride in hosting the Southeast Asia Sustainable Development Solutions Network since 2013. This partnership exemplifies how we work hand in hand with global and regional leaders to translate ideas into impactful practice. UID Bali campus serves as both a physical and intellectual hub, promoting learning, innovation, and partnerships that align with the Sustainable Development Goals across ASEAN. UID's commitment to fostering collaboration is evident in its approach to advancing trust-based partnerships. By convening diverse stakeholders from the government, civil society, and business, UID creates platforms and hubs where bold ideas and innovative solutions can flourish. These platforms are not just about dialogue, but also about catalyzing action and nurturing leaders, which leads to tangible outcomes for communities and ecosystems. Let us consider that values of collaboration, innovation, and shared purpose as we chart a path forward. UID remains steadfast in its mission to support and nurture this partnership, knowing that together we can achieve far more than we ever could alone. 5 more pages. Ladies and gentlemen, today we celebrate the power of collaboration, the importance of trust, and the necessity of shared vision in creating meaningful changes. UID has long believed in the potential of partnerships to bridge divides and unite sectors, communities, and individuals in pursuit for a better future. Through our program pillars, learning and capacity building, events and forum, social innovation initiatives, and ecosystem engagement, we strive to foster leadership, creativity, and collaboration to address the pressing challenges of our time. Ladies and gentlemen, today's lectures are an opportunity for us to reflect, learn, and act. Let us listen to the wisdom of Professor Sachs and the speakers, engage in meaningful dialogue, and leave this room with a renewed commitment to taking bold and transformative steps. Together, we can help Indonesia and the world navigate the path toward a just, equitable, and sustainable future. Ladies and gentlemen, Bapak, Ibu, Saudara-saudara sekalian, thank you again to the Ministry of National Planning, Professor Sachs, Ibu Mari, Professor Arif, Pak Junardi, and all speakers, and all of you here today for your dedication to this individual cause. Om Santi, Santi, Santi Om. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore. Sebelum saya turun, saya ingin motret Anda semuanya. Wah, keren. This is for my Instagram. I'm very active, activist in Instagram. Thank you. Selamat sore.
Thank you very much, Bapak Tantowi Yahya, for your insight in this special occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda, we will listen together the opening speech, which will be delivered by the Vice Chairman of the National Economic Council, to Ibu Mari Elka Pangestu. The floor is yours.
Professor Jeffrey Sachs and Sonia Sachs, Professor Wu Wing Tai, I do have to mention you since you supervised my PhD thesis. Ibu Teni, Sesmen Bappenas, as well as all the deputies, Pak Arif Satria and Pak Junardi, distinguished guests and friends. Good afternoon, and I'm very honored today to address you all on this very important occasion where we are going to be reflecting on Indonesia's path in global challenges and shaping a sustainable world. I think, Jeffrey, this is not the first time you are here in Bappenas. I mean, I can count the number of times, and it is over a long period of time. And I have been together with Jeff since the time of MDGs, remember MDGs? Midterm review of MDGs, and then the SDGs in 2015. And I actually remember I think it must have been 2016 or so, when you came to Bappenas and congratulated Bappenas for integrating the SDGs into the national planning. Fast forward, today we heard, we're 60% there. We have 5 years to go. We're 60% there. So not only planning, but implementation. But of course, what are we going to do to really get there in the next 5 years? And beyond 2030, obviously, there are still many, many, many more challenges. So we are really honored for Jeff to come and also give us the reminder again, how do we do not just the next 5 years to 2030 and beyond. Let me just, as the Vice Chair of the National Economic Council, just give you a few brief snippets or insights about Indonesia and where it's going. First of all, I think Indonesia's economy has shown resilience amidst global challenges, including geopolitical fragmentation, climate change, and the rapid pace of technological disruptions. And we do have to navigate this polycrisis and the medium-term challenges such as the global food crisis, the geopolitical fragmentation, the climate change, and the digital disruption. But resilience is not enough. You know, we've been able to grow at 5%, but resilience is not enough. We must ensure that growth is going to be both steady and inclusive. And one of the things we have been doing is to really maintain fiscal discipline. This does sound boring, but ensuring fiscal discipline while increasing productive spending is really quite important. And we have been able to, we went to 6% for our deficit during the pandemic, but we have brought it down to 3%. And we are focusing the state budget on what matters, which is on human capital and education, as well as healthcare. And these investments are not just about addressing immediate needs, but building a foundation for a sustainable growth. But growth in itself is not enough. We require adaptability to global uncertainties and to domestic empowerment of key industries and communities. And here is just a few snippets on the economic transformation that this government is planning. So one of the key strategies is economic restructuring, transitioning from raw material dependency to high value added industries. But in general, how do we increase higher value added? And it has to be about having a good roadmap for increasing the value added, being competitive, and doing it not by sacrificing environmental standards, and making sure that the benefits will be broad-based. And you know, we talk a lot about how Indonesia needs to diversify away from just its reliance on natural resources and commodities. And this is going to be part of the challenge. And the challenges remain. The first challenge is that we have a high investment capital output ratio. Basically, we are inefficient in the use of our investments. And we have low fiscal multipliers, meaning that the government investment is also not as impactful as it should be. And we are facing, why are we facing this lack of investment or inefficiencies in investment? It is because of our investment climate. We are facing barriers. This is based on many, many studies, and when I'm also involved with APindo, one of our business associations, a lot of these issues come up as impediments to investment, and we fall below other ASEAN countries in terms of ease of doing business It is about logistics costs, trade policies, and limited labor capacity that hinder our progress. So unless we can improve our competitiveness and address the human capital issue and the quality of the labor and so on, we are not going to be able to attract the investments that will lead to job creation. And so to address this, we must improve our investment climate, ease of doing business, and enhance industrial competitiveness to create jobs and ensure long-term economic sustainability. And on the sustainability point, competitiveness today is not just about making goods the cheapest that you can. It has to be that you are part of the sustainable supply chain. And that means you do need green energy to drive your production and services. It does mean you have to be part of the sustainable supply chain. Otherwise, you are not going to be competitive. You're not going to be able to sell your goods to the international market or to the domestic market. There will be increased demand for green products domestically as well. And I just want to emphasize one area that the National Economic Council is going to be focusing on, which is advancing government digitalization. Digitalization is at the heart of Indonesia's effort to improve governance and reduce inequality. And really, it is about accelerating the digital transformation at the government level, and which will obviously be mainstream into the overall economy. There are 4 pillars in terms of the national digital services. Revenue collection, and we've started that with Cortex. Simbara was the system that was created to ensure that we get enough there's no escape for the coal producers and the palm oil producers. It is by using digital means to ensure that we know exactly how much is being exported and therefore how much needs to be paid to the government. Spending efficiency. And here is, I think, where e-procurement which was introduced 2 years ago, has been relatively successful. And it's not just about efficiency. We have introduced also, you have to have green standards for the government products and services. It is also about trying to encourage local content in the government procurement. The third is public services to the public, from the cradle to the grave, health, education, and so on. And hopefully this means that there will be no one left behind. And fourth, of course, how to use digital government structures to have better services for the business services, which at the moment is focusing on the one-stop service, OSS. We have to switch SOS to OSS. I think all of you who have been experienced with OSS will know what I mean. And this requires public digital infrastructure to be built out, which is about single digital ID, digital payments, and data exchange. The President has given a green light to prioritize as soon as possible the creation of the digital single ID, and we will find use cases to do it in stages. So that's on one of the key programs which we hope will help us to also support the attainment of SDGs by 2030. Let me close with the challenging aspect of financing sustainable development goals. So achieving sustainable development goals requires significant resources which are beyond the state budget. So if we just focus on one of our big challenges, despite the achievements and progress we have made on achieving SDGs, I think achieving our goals in climate change and development is still something that's going to be very challenging. On the left-hand side, you will see it's a modeling exercise. Don't think about the numbers, just think about the direction. That if you did nothing in business as usual case, growth is going to be 1.2% lower. Because of the effect of climate change on productivity and then on growth, and 6.9% in the longer term. And it's going to affect the poorest population more than the higher population. So climate change affects the vulnerable and the poor more. And second, the health costs means that life expectancy is going to be 1.2 years lower, and you're going to have increased frequency of disasters, which we already are experiencing, right? This comes from the World Bank Climate and Development Report modeling. There are many modeling exercises. And you're going to face transition costs, stranded assets, not being part of the sustainable supply chain, the whole cost of the green transition. That is a very big challenge and a big cost. So on the right-hand side, it shows you if you actually did your NDCs or achieve your ambition of net zero before 2060. Business as usual is the first graph. The second and third graph is ambition. The last one is the most ambitious one. But that requires you to address energy transition, FOLU, food and land use, which black is the energy one. Green is very small, sorry for that. Green is food and land use. That's the number 2. And green also means we are also possibility of green a carbon sink, so that we can earn carbon credit with our forests, with our oceans, and so on. And blue is waste. And orange is agriculture. It shows you the priority sectors and the investments that we must make in these sectors if we are going to make success in achieving net zero before 2060. That needs money. It needs financing. And our estimate is that we're going to need $200 to $300 trillion to be able to achieve those goals. And only 80 trillion, or slightly less than 1/3, is going to come from the government. Therefore, the rest has to come from other sources. And this is blended finance, which is the G20 Global Blended Finance Alliance, which Indonesia has initiated in 2022, can play a role. How do you get different sources of financing, public, consensual development funds, grants from philanthropy, private sector, which are different sources of funding with different rates of return and expectation of return. Like philanthropy doesn't expect a profitable return, but private money needs profitable return, and also different risk appetite need to be combined with different investment needs, which also have different risks and return. That's really what blended finance is about. But it has to have the enabler, which is policies and institution. And this is really what we all need to collectively do together, and hopefully we can achieve that. And I hope that Jeff will give us some ideas about how we can move forward on this agenda. So let me close with how do we achieve our 2045 vision of Golden Indonesia, which is high growth, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth. Macroeconomic stability is obvious, but how do we build on the strengths of our abundant natural and human resources? This is the challenge. I think the moment we say climate, people tend to switch off, and we need to start with the growth and job creation story. How do we achieve growth and job creation, but at the same time, we also address, we do it in a way which is going to be sustainable, both in the climate change perspective as well as in the social and economic perspective. And we need leadership, we need agile governance, we need to be able to navigate domestic and global complexities. And this is, 60% of our country, population, is either millennial or Gen Z. I hope I got that number right. So our youth is very important, empowering our youth, because they are the ones that's going to drive this growth and demand politically that the government does what it needs to do. And this is the value that we have been promoting at UID, so I'm kind of switching hats. I used to be where Tantowi was sitting. We have to have open mind, open heart, and open wills to really co-create, to move forward together. And really, we want to have a sustainable future. And hopefully today's discussion will serve as a call to action for all stakeholders who are in the room today, that we have the resources, we have the vision, and we have the determination to lead in addressing global challenges. And as Professor Jeffrey Sachs takes the stage, let us all reflect on the insights shared and commit to turning challenges into opportunities and really work together for our common future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Mari Elka Pangestu, for your opening speech. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ministry of National Development Planning, Bappenas, as the coordinator of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in Indonesia, continues to encourage constructive dialogue to strengthen multi-stakeholder partnership in implementing the achievement of the SDGs. Today, we are all here at the SDGs Lecture series in 2025. This event is a joint collaboration between Ministry of National Development Planning, United in Diversity Foundation, and Sustainable Development Solution Network. Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda is the SDGs lecture by Professor Jeffrey Sachs. But before we welcome Professor Jeffrey on stage, I would like to welcome our moderator today, Ibu Vivi Yulaswati, as Deputy for Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation from the Ministry of National Development Planning, to come to the stage. To Ibu Vivi Yulaswati, the floor is yours.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, MC, that already mentioned that I'll moderate. It is an honor for me to really have you all here. But before it, I'd like to give some very short introductions for Professor Jeffrey Sachs, short bio. Professor Jeffrey Sachs is an economic professor, the best-selling author, and of course, global leaders in sustainable development. Professor Sachs serves as a director of the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University. He also a president of the UN Sustainable Development Solution Network, commissioner of the UN Broadband Commissions for Development, and SDG advocate for UN Secretary Antonio Guterres. Professor Sachs has authored and edited numerous books, including a couple of New York Times bestsellers. Professor Sachs is the 2022 recipient of the Thank Prize in Sustainable Development, was the co-recipient in the 2015 Blue Planet Prize, and has received 42 honorary doctorates. So without further ado, please welcome Professor Jeffrey Sachs.
Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction, and thanks to all of you for this wonderful opportunity to be together. I am not a stranger to this place and this stage. It's many, many visits over many years, and quite honestly, I learn much more from you than I could ever hope to impart. So for me, I'm grateful every time that I come. Bappenas is a remarkable institution. Bappenas has been a leader in concepts of planning national development for more than 60 years. And it's a great success story. And even as I was just embarking on my career decades ago, I got to come to know the leaders of Bappenas, to learn about these processes. Many times we've been together at pivotal international occasions, and I have always watched the insights and the innovation and the resilience of this institution, and indeed its pioneering manner. When the SDGs were adopted, Bappenas was the first of the planning agencies to incorporate the SDGs into the planning process. And Bang Bang was leader of Bappenas at that time and did an absolutely wonderful job. I was amazed and impressed, and again, I learned, so I got to look smart because I went around the world and said, you know, you can incorporate this into planning. Of course, I always do my best to give credit to Bappenas for all that it teaches the world. I thought on this occasion, given the importance of this institution, I would start out by reflecting on how the planning process itself is changing over time. And maybe somebody could do a study, I'm thinking of Marie, of course, or other colleagues, a study looking at Bappenas's plans over the last 60 years to do at least a quick view of how the concepts have changed and what it is that is being incorporated into the new plans that reflect the changes of the global environment, the changes of the economy, the changes in the challenges that we face, because you have a full documentary record. You have all the national plans of Bappenas over many decades, and I think it would be quite fascinating to read through them and to at least try to encapsulate how the plans have changed over time. I think there is a new planning environment now, and there are 7 elements that I wanted to highlight as what I think marks a significant difference in the challenge that Bappenas will face now versus the challenge, say, of 20 years ago. Now, some of these are already well in process. Others, I think, are somewhat newer, in fact, but I'll mention 7. The first and most central to the whole concept of the Sustainable Development Goals is the integrated nature of planning that spans far more than the first plans of economic development and the rise of GDP per capita and the identification of a few key sectors, but now embraces economic development, the social dimension in many ways, especially the gaps between rich and poor, the inequalities, the differences regionally, the differences between urban and rural, and the absolute central aim of universal access to quality lives and to public services. So the range of integration is vastly more than at the start of the planning process. Now, with the SDGs for the last 10 years, there are at least 4 fundamental pillars of planning, and only the first of these really was central to planning in the period of the 1950s to perhaps as late as 2000 or 2010. The 4 pillars are the pillars of the SDGs: the economic pillar, to finally eliminate all forms of poverty, to ensure for this country that Indonesia reaches high income status, which is achievable and within reach in a short period of time, to address the other economic development challenges of a balanced multi-sector economy, as Marie was just saying. Second, the social pillar, which is core to sustainable development, reducing inequalities, ensuring universal access, ensuring gender equality, SDG 5, and other forms of reduced inequalities across the society. The third fundamental point of the SDGs, of course, is to integrate the environmental dimensions in all their forms. I doubt that this appeared almost anywhere in the early plans. Now they're at the very center of planning. We need deep transformations in land use, deep transformations in energy use, deep transformations in the chemical sector, which provides vital materials but also toxic pollutants. And so these environmental pillar of sustainable development is at the very core now of planning. It's at the very core of the key word that Marie used, which is transformation. We're no longer looking at simply adding capital to get growth. We're fundamentally looking at transformation to ensure that environmental sustainability is at the core of the economic and social strategy as well. The fourth pillar of sustainable development are SDGs 16 and 17. SDG 16 is peaceful and inclusive societies. And as Sherry reminded me just minutes ago, peace, justice, and social institutions that work at the core of SDG 16. And SDG 17 is global partnerships. This is a worldwide effort. So planning can only succeed in the context of global goals and global ambition. When the SDGs were announced, Bappenas ran to put them into the planning process. And as early as 2017, Indonesia gave its first voluntary national report. This was a great achievement. One of the leaders, the earliest reporters in the whole world. But you've done it 3 times already, and this time will be the 4th. In 2019, you had the 2nd voluntary national review. In 2021, you had the 3rd voluntary national review. And in July 2025, at the high-level political forum, you will set a record with the 4th voluntary national review. And this is absolutely, absolutely wonderful. Now, I do have to say that there are very few countries that not only have not done 4 or 3 or 2 or even 1 VNR, there are a few that have done no voluntary national reviews. Quite remarkably, of the 193 UN member states, 190 now have done voluntary national reviews, and 3 remain. It's a kind of understandable fact, but you can probably help overcome at least one of them. One of them is Myanmar, which has been so much in conflict over the years that it has not done a national review. The second is also understandable, continuing conflict. The second is Haiti, that still has not done a voluntary national review. The last one of the whole world that has not done a national review is a small country on the other side of the world called the United States of America. Myanmar, Haiti, and the United States. So I hope that the US will get it before you do the 7th VNR. And I think you could help, some guidance. Of course, the first thing we need in the United States is a Bappenas. We don't have a planning ministry. We don't. We don't have an economy ministry. We don't have a development ministry. We don't have a planning ministry. Nobody thinks ahead. So they're not actually aware of this problem. I've tried to hint at it for the last 10 years, but so far I have not been heard. Last year, by the way, there were 5 still remaining, but South Sudan and Yemen got in front of the United States line for issuing the VNR. So the first of the points that I would emphasize of the new planning is how broad the elements of planning have become. This is quite remarkable, to put economic, social, environmental, and international geopolitical considerations together into planning is not easy. but you are doing it, and I really want to encourage you to continue to pioneer in that highly integrated effort of thinking through what the future should look like and how to get there. The second element of planning that I think is distinctive at this stage is the need for long-term planning. And long-term planning beyond what is also important, a vision statement. A vision statement is not a plan, but it's very important. It helps the entire society to see where society should head, and for young people to think about how they would like to fit into the future and what actions they should take, and for the businesses to understand how they fit into a changing society. But we actually now need something extremely difficult, and that's real plans over a horizon of 20 or 25 years. And this is something new and very hard to do. Why do we need such long-term plans? Think of one of the fundamental transformations that's needed today, the energy sector. We know, and I almost guarantee you, I'm ready to say guarantee you, we will have a low-carbon global energy system at mid-century. It may sound like a rash promise because a lot of conventional wisdom, certainly what the oil companies tell us is you're going to be using fossil fuels for decades to come. I think that this is actually wrong. And the reason it's wrong is that it will be understood to be far too dangerous to continue with the status quo soon enough. If eyes are open, you know it already. Los Angeles is not burning down out of a random occurrence. It's burning down because it's in a mega drought, and it was primed for massive fire. And of course, we're seeing disasters all over the world, as the climatologists warned us 20 years ago, and many of those warnings went unheeded, and we have arrived in extreme climate danger. And we already hit the 1.5 degree limit, which we said we would not hit in Paris in 2015. We hit it in 2024. And incidentally, as I like to explain to people, my climate guru is Professor James Hansen, who is America's lead climatologist. He was the lead climate scientist for NASA for 30 years. He's brilliant. He's a wonderful person. He's absolutely terrifying to have as a colleague, by the way. Terrifying. Because he's soft-spoken. He comes up to you and he says, "Jeff, it's worse than we thought." And he says that for 20 years in a row. He never came up to me and said, "It's better than we thought." Now, when we were together at Paris on December 12, 2015, the day that the Paris Climate Agreement was gavelled, they hit the gavel, and I turned to Jim and I said, "This is wonderful." And he said, "Jeff, it's a disaster." I said, "What? This is wonderful." And I went off to give a press conference about how wonderful it is, and he went off to give a press conference about how disastrous it is. And basically what he knew, and he explained, was that while the IPCC reported the consensus, the cutting-edge science was already showing that the underlying climate worsening was happening faster and at an accelerated rate. And so we would hit the 1.5 degrees. He knew it 10 years ago. This is not any surprise. So what does this mean? It means that eventually our politicians at some point are going to realize this is no joke, and we've got to absolutely move much, much faster than we have moved. And that has come in some places. It hasn't come in other places. It's going to take another 4 years at least to reach Washington. That epiphany will not come during Trump 2, I'm afraid. I can tell you all with a high assurance that we will have 4 years where the rhetoric out of Washington will make no sense on this issue whatsoever. But you will know it because it's true. And Indonesia has the discomfort of being a major fossil fuel producing country, a major coal exporting country, a traditional fossil fuel exporter in a world where this will not continue to beyond mid-century. And so the need for transformation is absolutely undoubted in my view. And it will be seen to be undoubted. Now, changing an energy system is very hard, as you know better than anybody. When the economy depends on it, it's like a fundamental transplant of the core organ systems while keeping the patient moving and vigorous and growing and dynamic. And so this is a major challenge, and it requires at least a quarter century to carry out, because infrastructure needs to be changed, because today's vehicles on the road have a 10 or 15 or 20-year lifespan, because today's power plants are not going to be all retired early. Not at all. They're going to have their life. They will be phased out as they depreciate, as they lose their economic value, as it becomes economical to introduce the new zero-carbon energy systems over time. So there will be a quarter century of rolling off the old fossil fuel infrastructure and bringing on the new zero-carbon infrastructure. This needs to be planned. That's the essence of this transformation. The Paris Agreement is not very helpful in this regard, to tell you the truth, because this instrument of the Paris Agreement, the nationally determined contribution, is not what we need. It's what was achievable in the negotiations, but it's not what we really need or what you really need, because that NDC encourages 5 to 10-year thinking, but you don't want to make progress over 5 or 10 years and get locked into something that is unchangeable. You need to ask, how will Indonesia reach zero? You say 2060, I bet 2050, by the way, because the urgency will be even higher and because the technological possibilities will be even better. But whether it's 2050 or 2060, it needs active long-term planning. And so the length of time in the planning horizon in one variant of Bappenas' work needs to be a 20 or 25-year horizon. So yes, there needs to be a 5-year plan. There needs to be a 1-year budget, no doubt. But there also needs to be a 25-year plan as well. And that's a big challenge. That requires different kinds of models. That requires a lot of assessment about transformation and technological change. But it is core to the real planning process now. And it's not only the energy transformation, it's the land use transformation, it's the role of the mining sector. These are long-term changes that are needed. Of course, not to delay, but to know that they will only be implemented step by step over a period of 20 years, but they need to be implemented consistently during that period with a clear idea of where Indonesia is heading. The third element that is new in planning and that will become even more important is regional integration. And this is very hard, how to integrate your plans with the plans of other neighboring countries. It's almost not done. It's almost not even that the planning agencies get together and spend a couple days comparing their own plans, much less actually planning in a coherent regional way. But I think that this is also necessary in certain key areas, not every area, but in certain areas. The energy transformation is one of them. You cannot decarbonize the energy system one country at a time. And the reason is plain, and that is that many of the most important, lowest cost, zero carbon energy sources are not in your country, they're in your neighbors' countries. And because these are intermittent energy sources, when the wind isn't blowing here, or the sun isn't shining here, or the seasonality of the hydropower isn't working here, you need the neighbor's energy, so the electrons are going to flow in all directions depending on the day, the season, the weather, and an integrated regional grid is going to be far lower cost, far more resilient, and far cleaner than if Indonesia tries to make its own energy plans, which may lead to the conclusion we can't do this. But if you integrate the energy coming from elsewhere, then it can be done. Maybe a lot of Indonesia's power really should come from the deserts of Western Australia. The idea of the submarine cable is a good idea from what I can understand, a financeable idea, a sensible idea for regional integration. And of course, we know that the hydropower of Lao PDR is going to power Singapore by going through Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore and Indonesia are going to be interlinked. Now, planning that is a regional process, and of course there is the ASEAN power grid, but there isn't yet until today a regional decarbonization plan. The politicians are a bit shy of overcommitting. They don't want to commit also because they want to negotiate, which doesn't quite make sense to me, that you delay your own decarbonization because someone else is delaying. I think that that's actually a mistake, because decarbonizing earlier will be a competitive advantage, not a disadvantage. And incidentally, just to make one quick digression on that, why is China so competitive in electric vehicles right now? Well, one of the reasons is that in the US and Europe, they spent the last 10 years saying, well, maybe yes, maybe no. We don't really want to do it. It's not really going to happen. And China decided 10 years ago, we're going to do it. And now they completely dominate the international market. And of course, Tesla is a Chinese car. I don't know if Elon would put it exactly that way, at least the ones that are produced in the Shanghai Gigafactory. And so China went ahead and did this. Is it losing because it went early? No. Of course, the US and Europe are throwing up protectionist barriers in desperation right now because they missed the curve. Not because China did anything wrong, China did it right, and the US and Europe delayed and prevaricated and said, no, we're not going to do this, and now China dominates this market. So my point is, to make these transformations, which are really going to happen, you're going to have to plan regionally. And that's true both in the energy sector and also across many of the land use and marine cases. We are working in Borneo now with the scientists who are the lead ecologists of Borneo. And Borneo is 3 countries that need to cooperate to keep the island, this great, remarkable, unique biodiversity, not destroyed in the next 20 years, because it could be completely clean cut for palm oil before you blink an eye. It's profitable to do so. It's just disastrous to do so. And so This is another example of regional integration for the riversheds which are shared across countries, for the rainforests which are shared across countries, for the fisheries which are shared across countries. Bappenas needs to actively cooperate, not just being polite, but working in detail with other planning ministries of ASEAN to come up with regional plans. This is yet to be done. The fourth area that is new in planning is the blended nature of the transformation. And Marie already talked about this, and of course, UID has been, I think, the world's pioneer in pushing for blended finance. And blended finance is not only about blending finance. The reason it's blended is that the sectoral investments are also blended. The energy sector is a mix of public and private institutions. It's some private companies and it's some state-owned utilities. This is true in the mining sector. This is true in agriculture. This is true across the economy. The real economy is blended. The financing that is needed is also a mix of public and private and philanthropic finance. And the idea of the new center that was established here in your G20 presidency of a global hub for blended finance will be truly a center of excellence for the whole world, because everybody's going to have to understand how to make the financing for development. And there is no answer that it's going to come from the World Bank or the Asian Development Bank alone, or from the bond markets or from the banks. It's going to be all of the above, but not just randomly, but in a systemic way that reflects the underlying realities of these economic sectors. And so this blended nature of combining the public sector, the private sector, the NGO sector, the philanthropic sector, the academic sector, is something new also in planning. It needs to be a lot richer. Of course, Bappenas's main task is to plan the government's part of that, but you can only plan the government's part of that if you understand the complementary investments that are going to come from the business sector and from the other sectors of the economy. The fifth area that is new for planning is the crucial nature of technological change in the next 20 years. We are in the most disruptive, remarkable, I think, gold mine of technological change of modern history. Everything is moving faster than we know or than we can understand. And of course, the gains of the AI revolution were not expected at this rate even 5 years ago, certainly not 10 years ago. There were a few outliers. Ray Kurzweil wrote a book 25 years ago called The Singularity is Near, and he was a little bit mocked. Oh, what is this singularity that's going to come? And he wrote another book just this past year. He's a senior Google advisor, and he wrote another book last year detailing that he underpredicted the pace of the arrival of the new technologies, because he said certain things would only come in 2028 that have actually already arrived, especially the large language models that came onto the scene after the 2018 revolution in design of the AI architecture, the transformer architecture. This is going to happen across the economy. And this means that economic success, even more than in the past, will mean being part of the forefront of the technological revolution. Now, this is hard for a planning agency, but it's really important to understand what are the cutting edge technologies and make technological plans that are more central to the overall national development than in the past. To my mind, one of the great accomplishments of recent 20 years of planning was China's Made in China 2025 plan that was unveiled in 2014. It had one downside. It's driven the United States crazy. But what it really did was identify 10 cutting-edge technologies that China said are so strategic that China must be in the forefront of those technologies by the year 2025. And China made the list, and the list includes all the things we're talking about, semiconductors, digital transformation, electric vehicles, new forms of transport, precision agriculture, and so on. And you know what? 10 years onward, China succeeded. It's at the forefront of these technologies now. And it did it the right way. Hard work, lots of scientists, major investments in R&D, major advances in technology that came out of that R&D. And Indonesia is going to be part of these supply chains, but where will you be part? You want to be part at the top end of these supply chains with sophisticated technology, with the tremendous know-how here, with attracting the leading businesses of the world that want to produce here and students that want to study here in these advanced technologies. So a technology policy, I believe, is absolutely central. Here, the United States has done a pretty remarkable job over the last 50 years. There wouldn't be an internet, there wouldn't be a digital age, there wouldn't be a computer age without the US role. It's strange for the US, all of it, almost without exception, was from the military sector as the mover of it, even though most of it ended up as civilian economy. But the internet, we know, was a project of the Defense Department and so forth. Okay, the US is always ready to spend on the military, even if it basically is a boost for technology. But I did finally realize a few days ago, China announced that it was reaching the 50,000th kilometer of fast rail, and the US has 0. And I realized it's because the Pentagon doesn't care about rail. So we've never invested anything in that technology, and we're still stuck somewhere around 40 years ago in rail technology. All of this is to say, what is Indonesia's Made in Indonesia 2035 strategy? This is a good question for Bappenas to ask. Of course, together with the Ministry of Science and Technology, with the Ministry of Higher Education, with the Ministries of Trade, and so on, and to canvass economy-wide and to help service the new digital platforms that Marie spoke about, because the whole government is going on to an advanced digital platform. But what are the areas in 2035 where Indonesia will be in the forefront of technology? You're big enough to do it, you're close enough to technology leaders, you can attract US, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, very advanced technology companies, all of whom will want to be here. But this requires a science and technology strategy, and I think it's more central to the planning process than ever. A sixth element of planning is diplomacy, diplomatic planning. And that's because we're in a new geopolitical era. It was simpler 20 years ago. Join WTO. That was your economic diplomacy. Now you have to navigate big power politics. and big power politics is not going to go away anytime soon. I expect, I pray that it stays peaceful, but even if it stays peaceful, it's going to be complicated. And it's going to mean that Indonesia is going to face a plethora of geopolitical challenges with China, with the rest of East Asia, India, the United States, the European Union. And that requires planning as well. Of course, it's the planning of the foreign ministry that will count the most and of the presidency, but Bappenas needs to have a sense of this diplomacy as well for its national and regional strategy. My main advice, by the way, is don't do this alone. Diplomacy, one country at a time, is just not very safe. If you can stay as the 10 of ASEAN together, basically saying to the other major powers, we'll be nice to you, you be nice to us, and we're not choosing sides. This will be the best possible route for Southeast Asia. It's feasible, but it's a challenge. And it also requires a lot of planning with this alphabet soup of trade institutions. Now you're part of the BRICS as well as ASEAN, as well as RCEP, and on and on. And so all of this requires integration into the planning process. And the seventh and obvious point that I would emphasize is all planning, in some sense, will now be digital. Digital in not only the fact that our economy will run on a digital platform, that government will run on a digital platform, but all the mechanisms of governance in terms of monitoring, in terms of accountability, in terms of performance evaluation, will also be digital. And Bappenas, of course, needs to have high expertise in the digital analytical tools. I think the most important these days is real-time geographic information system utilization, because you are an incredibly diverse archipelago of thousands of islands, of tremendous range of activities, of a very diverse cultural and economic reality as well. And GIS and real-time monitoring of what's happening on the land, what's happening with the climate, what's happening with the crops, what's happening with the forests, what's happening with the mining sector, what's happening with the fisheries, is central for good planning now. And you're going to have a digital platform for government that can support that, but this is lots of new analytical tools that I think will be absolutely essential. So all of this is to say, ladies and gentlemen, I will come back next year and the year after and the year after to learn how you're doing, steal the best ideas, and to propagate them in other places, because I know you'll be ahead of the curve on all of this. Let me just conclude by making the following point. It's easy to be very worried about the world, and I would be worried about the world. The world has been a very shaky and dangerous place in recent years, most importantly because of the wars and the conflicts, all of which have logical, fair solutions if we would only act according to basic principles of fairness and international law. The war in the Middle East will end the day the U.S. drops its veto against a state of Palestine, because these wars have gone on for decades because the the United States, unfortunately, has blocked the obvious, the fair, and the international legal solution to the Middle East, which is the two-state solution, which has been on the books for 57 years, but at Israel's behest, the U.S. has blocked it. I just give that example because we could solve every one of the problems we have today: the Ukraine war, the Middle East war, the U.S.-China tensions, by straightforward standards of fairness, prudence, justice, and finding the peaceful approaches to all of this. Well, we haven't figured out how to do that because there are a lot of things wrong with our psyches that drive us to conflicts that never should happen and shouldn't be prolonged. But all of this is to say, yes, of course, we have to worry because the situation is fragile. But I want to end on a different note, which is that I believe that we also could be on the cusp of a remarkable and unprecedented advance in well-being in the coming years because of the remarkable new tools that we have in technology. The fact that we have a clear pathway to a sustainable energy system, the fact that we have a clear pathway to sustainable land use and food security, the fact that we can solve the ecological problems without taking a hit to well-being, but rather with a great advance of well-being. This is what is really within our reach right now. It's within our reach if we remain at peace, if we look ahead, if we cooperate, and if we follow the wisdom of Bappenas' plans. Thank you very much.
Let's give round of applause again to Professor Jeffrey Shah. Now I would like also to invite Professor Arif Satria and Pak Jun to join us here to continue our discussions for about another 30 minutes. Pak Arif Satria is the rector for the IPB University, one of the distinguished university in Indonesia, and Pak Junardi is the president of the Indonesian Global Compact Network. I think we've learned a lot from Professor Jeffrey Shah about what we have to move forward. At least there are 6 points. I'd like to ask Professor Arif first to give some response to the points that Professor Shah already mentioned. Please, Pak. Time is yours. 10 minutes.
Terima kasih, Bu Vivi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, ladies and gentlemen, Prof. Jeff, Bu Mari, Bu Ses, dan Pak Tantowi Yahya, para deputi, dan juga Mas Yanwar yang hadir pada hari ini. First of all, I feel honored today to be here to sit together with Professor Jeff. Your speech is very, very inspiring and insightful, and I'd like to address at least 4 issues regarding your talk. The first is about the governance. Prof. Jeff mentions the importance of planning. The pillar of planning is about the integrated planning, how to make the integrations amongst economic, social, environment, as well as the partnership and geopolitics. And one of the critical issues, we need the central governments to create enabling environment through strong directions, policies, and legislation that promote sustainable development. Clear vision of leadership, I think, is very important in creating such a supportive environment as well as strengthening governance. But the challenge is how we deal with the issue of vision gap between the central government and the local government, because now we have the multiple level of the government, central government, provincial government, and the local government. And I think the harmonization of vision to achieve sustainable development goals is very important among the level of the government. And Professor Jeff also mentioned about the long-term planning. I think the long-term plannings, when we established long-term planning 40 years ago, I think it's quite different with we have long-term planning today. Why? It's because now we are dealing with the issue of disruption. The technological change is very, very fast. And now it's quite difficult for us to predict what actually happens in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years, in the next 20 years. So my question is it still appropriate to put 25 years as the period of long-term planning? The second point is about the securing financing for SDGs. I think as Bu Mari also mentioned about the financial aspect. By mobilizing both domestic resources through taxation or innovative financing mechanism, engaging international financial institutions, and also how to engage the private sector through public-private partnership, corporate social responsibility, as well as a blended financing. And also, I think we need to have another way, like philanthropics, civil society contributions, such as global philanthropy, crowdfunding, voluntary contribution, as kind of the blended financing. So we need to encourage individual and corporation to contribute SDGs focused initiative. But I think our challenge is how to utilize technology and innovation to make financing SDGs effective and transparent, such as by using blockchain. I think it's very important to track and to optimize SDG financing flows. And AI, how to employ AI to identify funding gaps, to optimize resource allocation, and to measure impacts. I think we need to have such kind of the technology innovations to monitor the financial aspect of sustainable development goals. The third point is about the diplomacy. I think Prof. Jeff mentions one of the pillar of planning is about the diplomacy. I think one of the important points, how to strengthen the position of Indonesia in Global South leadership. It is necessary to enhance diplomatic leadership and regional collaborations by sharing best practice, technology, and resources with other developing countries. And one of the important things, Prof. Jeff, I think, how Indonesia can be champion for priority issues, champion for food security, champion for sustainable agriculture, champion for energy transitions, and champion for climate change mitigation and adaptation. For example, for accelerating energy transition, I think we need to expand investment in renewable energy and provide inclusive energy policies. How make Indonesia to be champion in food security and sustainable agriculture? I think by enhancing innovation for smart and regenerative agriculture, food diversification, and supporting smallholder farmers. I think it is very challenging for us because we have the difference between the characteristic of agriculture in Indonesia and in United States. Well, farmers in United States, I think mostly dominated by 3.0 farmers. If we refer to term 4.0 as the disrupt digital technology, I think United States maybe can be categorized mostly as the 3.0 farmers. But in Indonesia, we have multiple classes of farmers. We have 3.0 farmers. We have 2.0 farmers. We have 1.0 farmers. We have also 0.0 farmers maybe. And I think it is our challenge how to bring together to go on the next step for 4.0 in promoting smart agriculture. And then also championing in addressing climate change through enhancing adaptation, mitigation, ecosystem, restoration, and climate financing. And also, Pak Jeff mentions about the technological policy. I have the interesting data. According to Future Skills in 5 years ago report, Future Skills Report 2020, the growing skills in Japan and South Korea is artificial intelligence. The growing skills in Hong Kong and Singapore is blockchain. And the growing skills in India is robotics. How about Indonesia and Philippines? The growing skill is social media marketing. So it is the true data, and I think our challenge is how to strengthen our skill in blockchain, in AI, as well as in robotics. The second issue is about the sustainable innovations. As I highlighted previously, to enable Indonesian leading at Global South, we must champion priorities issues of SDGs, like in food security as well as in energy transition. And it indeed needs strategic plans and action and strong collaboration to create more best practice through science and innovation. And how about the role of university? Because maybe I'm invited here to show our perspective from university. Of course, university certainly has an important role in advancing science and produce more impactful innovation for SDGs. I think for impactful innovations, we, for example, in IBB University, we promote two double tracks, two pillars. The first is what we call sociopreneurship. The second one is technopreneurship. Technopreneurship, how you utilize innovation for business enterprise, while sociopreneurship is how to utilize innovation for social enterprise. And I think both bring the significant impacts for industry as well as for the society. And I think sustainable innovation is very important. So we need to come up with the new innovation, like, for example, how to produce seeds, rice seeds. We produce many varieties, 123 varieties. One of them is, for example, for paddy. Paddy ABB 3S already distributed to 26 provinces in Indonesia. And also we have the new variety with ABB 9G with the productivity nearly 12 ton per hectare. And then what is the sustainability content of this kind of innovation? It is very important to show that we need to, our innovations is resistant to blast disease and save fertilizer, save water until 30%. It is kind of our innovation, how to address the sustainability issues. When we are talking about the animal husbandry, for example, animal husbandry is always blamed as the source of greenhouse gas emission. But now we need to come up with the new innovations. IBB, for example, we successful to decrease 42% of gas methane. It is kind of the sustainable innovation. And through sociopreneurship, I think it's very important to push our students, to push our faculty members to go to the fields, to disseminate innovations, to empower the farmers, as well as to open the access of market. So some farmers now can produce the export product. This means that the farmers, when they got the appropriate education, appropriate empowerment programs, they can produce more quality products. And I think it can fit with the global demand for modern market. The third issue is about the sustainability science. I think university needs to promote sustainability science. Sustainability science is interdisciplinary field that integrates knowledge of Earth and social system to understand the interactions between nature and humans and to develop solutions to global sustainability challenges. Its focus is on mitigating the impact of human activities, supporting ecosystem balance, and ensuring the sustainability of life across generations. So what is the difference between sustainability science and the normal science? In sustainability science, we promote interdisciplinary and then transdisciplinary and focusing on problem solving. And we have also the pillar of regenerative sustainability, how to ensure that the research and proposed solutions focus on ecosystem, wise resource use, community engagement to create a sustainable ecological balance for future generation. So university, I think, have the important role, insignificant role, how to promote sustainability science by promoting interdisciplinary science and then how to strengthen the community engagement, and how to recognize local knowledge as one of the source of the knowledge. Because, for example, farmers, fishers have the daily operation in the field, and they have very, very good knowledge. But the problem is how to make how to systemize their knowledge to enrich science. I think collaboration between local knowledge and science is very important to, to solve the issue of sustainability. And the last one is about the focus on impact, how we increase the contributions to the societal goals as well for economic and social issues. The last issue is about human development. In human development, I think it is central to SDGs. It's also highlighted in SDGs Pact for Future, related to youth and future generation, science and technology. When we are talking about human development, I think there are four main aspects. The first is about access. I think the government should ensure to provide more access for the student to pursue their study at university as well as to high school. In the past, we have wajib belajar 9 tahun. It is compulsory for all people in Indonesia to have the 9 years learning. But I think it is not enough. We need to make wajib belajar or compulsory time for learning maybe 12 years. The second one is about curriculum. The fast changing driven by digital technology has impact all aspects of human life, including job and economy. And I think it is our agenda how to ensure the curriculum development fits the future needs. The use of AI for education, I think, is inevitably. Therefore, we need to provide adaptive regulation as well as increasing digital literacy for all elements, including teacher as well as for lecture. And I think that is 4 issues I'd like to respond from Prof. Jeff lecture. But I have one last question to Chair.
No ABC,
to Jeffrey.
Pak.
Last question. Prof. Jeff, are you optimistic that sustainable development goals will be achieved by 2030? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof. Arif Satria. FYI, Prof. Arif Satria, as a rector, has led the IPB University to award 3 times for the SDGs Action Award. So give him applause for sure. Now, Prof. Jeff, could you hold a moment to respond for that? Now I'd like to ask Pak Jun to also give some points, another 10 minutes, Pak. Silakan.
Baik, terima kasih Bu Vivi. Okay, well, first of all, I would like to congratulate Bappenas, and also SDSN and UID for having this kind of session, which is, I think, very important. And this is the first lecture series for 2025. I hope there will be another second series, the third one, and so forth, because the knowledge and sharing is very important for us, what we are trying to work on and what we are planning. The second one is I would like to also appreciate Prof. Jeffrey. Listening to you time to time is very refreshing for me, okay? Because it's typically you're straightforward, okay, honest, frank, and also inspiring, and to me is sometimes also provoking and awakening. Yeah, and this is the important one to me, because you live something that what should be done in the next when you are saying about this one. So this one is very important one. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm like a student sitting in the test now, listening to this Mari's lecture, professor lectures, and then in 10 minutes I need to get the comments, and then saying, what have you learned from all of this? Now, I would like to do some kind of summarization, not to repeat again, but some of them will be something that have been touched and also by Professor Arif, and hope I pass the test. I would like to use summary, these 2 pages lecture from you, with what I call the 3S actions. Okay. And the first S is scale up. Because what we need to do when we are talking about all of these planning things, 7 items, you need to do the scale up and mobilize the whole effort to do these things to make it happen. We need now to scale up the whole participations of governments, public sector, private sectors, academicians, communities, even in order to achieve the 2030 agenda, which based on the question from Pak Ari. I think we are in a bad position, to achieve by 2030. Now, but yet, whatever it is, okay, it is not to worry, as you mentioned. It is still leadership role, the leadership role in order to scale up. Okay, what are the issues, challenges that we have in with the Indonesia context in terms of SDG? I think we are talking about the Bappenas and Indonesia priority in the climate issues. Okay, in sustainable infrastructure developments, inclusive economic growth, and then financing gap, as you mentioned also. And now also one important thing is what food and health. Okay, and so we are now feeding the children everyday meals in order to, it is the long term for the new generation. And also I would like to see now we need to have scale up, participate everybody else in that planning process that you mentioned. Not only the government plan, okay, to be public, but involve and engage all the sectors, the private and public sectors, in order to develop together in terms of the plans, and then also later on monitoring. So we need to have, the question is how we are going to strengthen institutional framework and capacity, including, okay, the weak and limited resources at the local government. Because Indonesia is its own wide countries, okay, a lot of things going on now in Jakarta, okay, in other provinces with a new cabinet. I think from my experience, the private sector, those businesses, it's a lot of these not very clear understanding about what's going on in the countryside, in the provinces. Now, certainly how to increase the private sector engagement, because they are the crucial for the achieving the SDG, because they can provide funds, they can provide expertise, and they can also help in providing the innovative solutions for the implementation to accelerate the achievement of the SDG. The second S is skill up. Skill, improving the competence, the skill. Okay. We need to conduct consistent education programs. This can be a short term, this can be long term. Okay, capacity building, workshop, sharing cross-sector, including the local government, private sector, to enhance understanding of the SDGs, and then to understand, to get in more knowledge and know-how to do the implementations, and also to be able to say how the leadership should play a role in all of these implementations. Okay. Now, you mentioned about technology. I would like also to mention, we still a problem with our internet here. Okay? So just basic one here. Okay? So how we are going to expand the internet access, not only capacity and access, because when we are talking about SDG, we would like to encourage people to participate. That means we should be able to have the access of the internet in even the rural side, not only in the big cities. And I think this is still a problem in Indonesia. Now, when you are talking about another on this technology and resources, is about the renewable energies. We have some countryside, they have the internet, it's not sufficient, but there is no electricity. Right? So when we are talking about development, inclusive development for the whole country, Indonesia, simply what we need to do is just very basic. Okay, the availability of technologies, okay? The simple one is internet access and electricities. Okay? And this happened also with some of our colleagues here doing the health care project in the countryside, doing the implementation of training programs. these two facilities are not available. So the question is basically how to promote renewable energy to be distributed rather than to be centralized. The second one is basically how to leverage the digital technologies for SDG in monitoring and reporting. The next is, the third S is basically synchronized actions. So we need to review and synchronize the supporting regulatory framework. We need to synchronize priority and programs. We need to avoid the redundant programs and to ensure the effective resources and effective use of the funds, because many departments, many business units just do their own, okay? And then this communication, you are talking about this diplomacy planning, okay? In a small scale, I'm talking about diplomacy planning internally in a country between the governments and also the private sector and the community and the university and so forth. So I think a supportive regulatory framework is necessary to encourage private sector investment in SDG related. This includes streamlining the permitting process, tax incentive and subsidies and all others. So collaboration and collective actions are essential. This collaboration approach can facilitate knowledge sharing, resource mobilization, and coordination action to achieve the SDG. And this also includes all the multi-stakeholders, government, private sectors, civil societies, academia, research, and so forth. So, and in summary, basically, in order to be able to do all of these three S's, okay, at the end of the day, is the leaderships and commitment for everybody to get it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pak John. IGCN works a lot to link us with many businesses in Indonesia who works closely on the SDGs in Indonesia. Prof. Jeff, would you mind if I also invite maybe 2 or 3 questions from the floor? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, bisa dibantu mic-nya? Sebelah kiri? Pakai ini dulu deh.
Thank you very much, Prof. Pak Arif and Pak Yaya. My name is Hasbi Shuhada. I'm from Telkom Indonesia. So basically, as a sustainability officer, I'm witnessing that most of the corporate sustainability actions are driven by regulatory obligations and financing pressure. And then as you talk about the international political shift, we observe that the new president-elect of the United States seems to be a little bit not supportive or less supportive to sustainability things. So how is SDGs or ESG or sustainability in upcoming times, how it affects the private sector despite the political shift? Thank you.
Thank you. The second hand in the middle. Oh ya, Bu Dina. Silakan Bu Dina Wisnu. And then Bu Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Ibu Fifi, Professor Jeff, Pak Arif, Pak Jun. Thank you so much for the speech. My name is Dina from Synergy Policies. I have a think tank working on policy design, evaluation, and implementation. So I wonder, when you say very good about Indonesia, would you say the same also about other countries that you have visited? Like, for instance, maybe have you visited China and its planning process? That's my first question. Second question, when you talk about the outcomes of planning, I wonder, did you also have any observations about factors such as transnational crime and corruption and how it will impact planning process? Because all the factors you mentioned are the good ones that the government wouldn't, would like to control, but there are other factors. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bu Dina. Bu Jennifer.
Terima kasih Ibu Vivi dan semua ibu-ibu dan bapak-bapak dari Bappenas dan semua stakeholder di sini. Thank you, Professor Sachs, for your remarks. My name is Jennifer. I'm the Country Director for the World Food Program here in Indonesia. Since you mentioned in your comment, and there's been so much reference to global networks, global entities, regional entities, whether that's ASEAN, BRICS, or the UN, perhaps if you can provide some additional insights as to what you would view, and also to the rest of the panel as well, as to the added value and the potential of the UN as a whole in Indonesia or any specific other institutions. So any insights or thoughts towards the role of the UN in Indonesia as part of this global network of different international bodies? And that question can also go to others on the panel as well. Terima kasih banyak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bu Jennifer. Jeff, I think now I'll go back to you to give some response. A lot of positive response, but also intriguing comments. Please, Pak.
Great. Thank you. Let me thank the wonderful remarks of the two commentators. I think they're all food for reflection, not a literal list of questions, but the questions of how to achieve these objectives in such a populous, diverse country that has so many different conditions, so many different physical, economic, geographical conditions. And again, I'm going to come back next year to learn the answer, rather than to take the easy way out and give you the answer. I don't know exactly, obviously, the answers to many of these questions. I do believe, as a very basic, obvious point, that we should be leveraging the online connectivity to the maximum extent possible. So if there are places where there is not connectivity, there should be a public policy to ensure that. Even in an area where the United States had a good experience 90 years ago when Franklin Roosevelt was president, then the issue was spreading electrification in rural areas in the US. And one of the things that I love about Franklin Roosevelt, who I consider to be America's greatest president, was that when he saw a problem, he came up with an answer that may not have been perfect, but it worked. So he had a rural electrification administration that gave essentially federal subsidies to ensure that electricity could reach every area. With the internet, it's actually easier. And now with distributed electricity, you really can get electricity anywhere. I've been working with my colleagues at Columbia University for 20 years now on microgrids and mini-grids in places that were quite far from a national backbone in low-income settings. And it is feasible to solve these problems of internet access now anywhere. Starlink is just one of those systems, and China has its own Starlink as well now. There is low-cost microwave. There are good packages of digital transmission and renewable energy together. Huawei is excellent at packaging these things, but it requires financing, especially if it's poor communities or communities that aren't aware of how important these services are. So I would say that the questions you ask are really worthy of good practical policy answers. I don't think one should wait on infrastructure when it comes to connectivity, because there are so many services: health, education, business services, basic social support services, now the digital government services that will come, payment systems, banking services, microcredit, all of which depend on being online, basically. And so this is a great benefit to have essentially universal access. I'd like to understand whether it's possible to get every child in school with a low-cost device and online, and what could be done with the curriculum if that were the case. I think COVID made a big advance on that because many schools were forced to go online, but we shouldn't lose the advantages that came, though now we can have a blended education system. So I think that these issues are requiring very practical answers. When it comes to the question of how to plan long-term with so much disruption, by the way, two thoughts come to mind. First, plans get adjusted over time. And I wouldn't go as far as our president, Dwight Eisenhower, who was military commander and then president of the US in the 1950s. And he had an expression, he said, plans are useless, but planning is everything. And so what he wanted was everybody to be looking ahead systematically, making the plans and knowing that they're going to have to be adjusted over time. But I would say a little bit more than that, which is that now we need not just plans, but we need physical investments to be scaled up. And it's going to take time, but it's important to know what the end aim is, for example, in the energy sector. And so the long-term plan will adjust in its particulars of exactly which technologies, which infrastructure, but the basic path to net zero, I think, is already pretty clear if we're only talking about a horizon no farther than 2050, because you need to put in an energy sector, a power distribution sector, and so forth pretty clearly along the way, and any fundamental breakthrough technology will be for after 2050, most likely. So in any event, without going into too many details, I think it is important to have long-term plans that are regularly updated. On the question, by the way, of enhancing Indonesia's role, organize lots of activities. Take the lead, bring people here. Bappenas can have meetings of the ASEAN planning ministries or of the world's planning ministries here. Come here, you'll be at the center of all of it. This is a big country. People want to come here. They want to visit. They want to be part of what's happening here. And so to raise the voice, it's a matter of organizing the effort, but it will be well worth it. And this is the goal of the new Global Center on Blended Finance, for example. This will become a world center for people to come, to learn, to study, to relate, to meet, to assess progress. So I do think that it's worth making that investment. In terms of, again, scale up, skill up, and synchronization, we are in the age of massively rapid scale up. And no technology has ever proceeded faster than these digital technologies. ChatGPT releases its model, everyone's amazed, and within 2 months there are more than 100 million users worldwide. And the numbers just keep soaring. So this is what makes skill up and scale up possible to a greater extent, I think, than ever before. On the questions that were asked, the 3 questions, on Trump and sustainable development. Well, don't hold your breath. Just take a deep breath, I would say. Give the US 4 years and we'll be back to sense. But what's happening in the US is a lot of activity and a lot of investment at the state and local level. So nothing's going to change because of that. Because everybody, not everybody, a lot of people know, a lot of regions know, a lot of politicians know. One of the fascinating things is that these states that have been in the center of fossil fuel are also the leaders of renewable energy now. Texas, for example, and North and South Dakota have become tremendously important renewable energy centers. Texas for huge solar and wind, the Dakotas for huge wind power, and the local politics didn't really matter. It is moving forward very, very fast. But for the world, just don't let the US slow you down. It's going to be confused for a while. I don't think it's going to be clarified very fast at the rhetorical level. There'll be a lot more rhetoric than reality about these issues, but the rest of the world, I think, will continue to move forward. On the question of other planning processes, I'm extremely impressed with China's planning process, by the way. And I think that Bappenas and NDRC should compare notes, should work together, should understand each other's mechanisms. And in any event, I'm a big fan of the Belt and Road Initiative. So I would like Indonesia to play a very big role in that. And that requires a lot of integration of the two planning ministries, Bappenas and NDRC. When it comes to corruption and planning, corruption really is an enemy of planning. And the new digital systems that the government is talking about can be huge advances in making enforcement processes much more straightforward, because there's a lot of accountability online. If money is not paid in cash, if money is not paid to empty accounts, but if the outlays are based on a digitized system with unique IDs and so forth, if payments are systematized, if there is monitoring and evaluation, which a digital-based e-governance system makes possible, this can tremendously improve efficiency. The other thing that is very basic and important is, if you're trying to control deforestation and there's a lot of illegal logging going on, well, you can watch that every day by satellite. And so there's a lot of feedback now. If the government wants to use the feedback, it's possible to control systems in much more sophisticated and adequate ways than in the past. And finally, let me say a word about the United Nations. I devote all of my time to the UN. After all, these are the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These are goals that never would have come without the UN. There would be no UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, no Paris Climate Agreement. Everything that we're talking about on biodiversity conservation, on the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, all of it depends on the United Nations. The United Nations is indispensable for our world, but it needs to be strengthened tremendously. And it needs to be strengthened in a number of very important and interesting ways. That's why there was a summit of the future at the UN last September to come up with new reforms to make the UN system more effective. The UN needs access to a lot more financing than it has. It shouldn't be the poor man on the block. It needs to have much, much larger revenues and much more control over financing for global public goods, for example. We need to get beyond the veto of one superpower that stops the whole world from moving forward. I mentioned the case of a state of Palestine. When Palestine was brought for membership in the UN last year, the UN Security Council was unanimously in favor except for one veto, the United States. Then it went to the UN General Assembly on what's called Uniting for Peace, and there was an overwhelming vote of the world's nations for Palestinian membership in the UN, but only advisory to the UN Security Council. So it will return to the UN Security Council this year. One country blocking the will of the world is not workable. We need reform. Part of what I was writing this morning, finishing a book that I'm writing, trying to explain to Americans, if you respect the UN more, we'll have more security for the US. It's not giving up our sovereignty, it's adding to our well-being. Because what you do when all countries come together and give up some freedom of maneuver for the sake of the collective, you strengthen yourself. That's why we are the United States of America. We had independent 13 states. They came together in 1787 because working independently wasn't working for them. They were a confederation, it didn't work. They had a constitutional convention and became a country, a single nation. So I'm trying to explain to the United States right now, the UN is your friend, not your opponent. It doesn't block UN sovereignty, it makes it possible to solve global problems. And I think we're going to get to that level of understanding. I don't know when, but we will. So for the UN, we need it more than ever. Its central role is more important than ever, and the need to strengthen the UN and its institutions is absolutely vital for achieving all that we want to achieve. Thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you so much. It's really an excellent sessions, full of food of thoughts that make us more confident to plan, to act, and of course to achieve all of the global commitment, including the SDGs. Again, thank you very much for the participations. Thank you very much, Professor Jeffrey Sah, Professor Arif, Professor Pak Jun. Again, give them a round of applause. And back to MC.
We will ask Prof. Jeffrey, Ibu Vivi, Prof. Arif, and Bapak Jun to stay on the stage. And we would like to kindly ask Bapak Pungkas Bajuri Ali as expert staff for social affairs and poverty alleviation to come to the podium and deliver the reflection and closing keynote speech. To Bapak Pungkas Bajuri Ali, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Distinguished Professors Jeffrey Sachs, Ibu Mari LK Pangestu, our ambassadors Pak Tonto Yahya, Prof. Arif Satria, Pak Jun, Ibu Vivi, and ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to seize this opportunity to thank Prof. Jeffrey for this remarkable lectures, as well as Bu Mari for her important remarks on the challenge on the financing of the SDGs. Thank you for Pak Tantowi Yahya and Pak Jun for your continuous support and commitment with us, so we can have this event this afternoon. And Pak Arif for your sharp observations of the message that have been given by Prof. Jeffrey. My job here is to remind you all before you're leaving the rooms of the message that has been conveyed this afternoon, and I would like to reiterate Prof. Jeffrey's message for us to think and how to proceed of how to achieve the SDGs. So we note that there are 7 important key messages for achieving SDGs. They are integrated planning, long-term planning, regional integrations, blended natures of financing, rapid technology change, diplomacy, and working together, as well as embracing digital transformations. We in Bappenas, drawing from these messages, I would like to highlight our following standings and roles in SDGs as follows. The current global landscapes influenced by geopolitical shifts, technological disruptions, and growing inequalities challenges the achievements of the SDGs as has been highlighted by Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Sustainable development requires transformations of societal foundations to restore dignity, safeguard the planet, and ensure inclusivity. Indonesia is recognized as the most committed countries in the Asia Pacific for advancing the SDGs, as shown by our achievements of 61.4% of the SDGs targets compared to around 17% in the global and Asia Pacific regions. The integrations of SDGs into our national frameworks, especially medium and long-term plan, visions of Indonesia Emas 2045, and Bappenas' roles is to coordinate the SDG implementations by coordinated planning across ministries and local governments and multi-stakeholders collaborations. Addressing global challenges requires genuine co-creations and breaking down silos between governments, private sectors, and academia, as well as communities. We are eager to advance technology and embrace digital transformations into our national approach in achieving our goals. Just to let you know that last night, there is a new deputy installed in Bappenas specific for economic and digital transformations, which is Ibu Vivi. So congratulations, Ibu Vivi. Yeah. So digital transformations will be very big things in Bappenas in coming years. Alignment of Indonesia national priorities and President Prabowo's Astacita programs with the SDGs ensure that national and global development efforts are mutually reinforcing. Indonesia committed to being a leader in regional and global sustainable development goals. Finally, as we close, let us remember the wisdom of, in Japanese, urip iku urup, life is meant to give light. Our leaderships, our policies, and our commitments must be that guiding light, not just illuminating our own path, but ensuring that the future generations can walk a path of justice, sustainability, and prosperity. So again, thank you for being with us all this afternoon. Happy weekend, and salam sehat. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Bapak Pungkas. And we would like to invite again Bapak Tantowi to join us on the stage to receive tokens of appreciation. For that, we also invite Ibu Teni Widurianti to give a token of appreciation for all of our speakers. The presentation of the token of appreciation will be carried out by Ibu Teni Widurianti. The first token will be presented to the President of the Sustainable Development Solution Network, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Following that, the token of appreciation will be given to the President, to the Rector of IPB University, Professor Dr. Arif Satria. The token will be presented to the President of the Indonesia Global Compact Network, Bapak Yaya Junardi. And the last, the token of appreciation will be given to the President of the United University Foundation, Bapak Tantowi Yahya. Ladies and gentlemen, may we kindly request you to stay in your place for the upcoming group photo session. For the photo session, we also invite our VIP guests that seated in the VIP chair row 1 to join us on the stage, and our team will assist you in arranging the formation.
Can I have a minute? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to show to you, this is the event that we did last month in our campus in Bali. It's a very successful event. And the placard was signed by our President Prabowo as a symbol of his strong support toward SDGs movement in our country and also in our campus.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the group photo session on my count. Okay, the group photo session in 1, 2, and 3. One more time, please, in 1, 2, and 3. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give a big round of applause to all of our speakers today. Now we kindly ask you Ladies and gentlemen, and with that, we come to the end of SDGs Lecture 2025. We would like to thank all of the speakers for the insight and all the participants for the lively discussion. And we hope that this lecture can enrich all of us on how to further accelerate SDGs implementation to ensure in achievement in 2030. I, Muhammad Firdaus Nur Ananda, on behalf of the organizing committee and the team, would like to express our gratitude and bid you farewell. We look forward to seeing you at the future event. Good afternoon and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.